Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this is only a Zoom program today because of the fast day, but a warm welcome to you all anyway. Parsha's Vayikra, the very first book, the very first Parsha in the new book, the middle book, on page in the Gutnik Chumash, for those of you who have 618, 619. I won't tell you what chapter it is. I'm going to ask you to figure that one out for yourself. It's the chapter of the book of Leviticus. You'll figure it out which chapter. Okay? And so the first thing, of course, we read about is the very first word in the Parsha, which gives us so much information and so much teaching, really, and such a powerful message. Vayikra, which means what? What does it mean? It means, and he called. And he called, exactly. And he called. Now, normally, of course, it's unusual because you would say, if we're talking about a communication between God and Moshe, the usual expression is Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, right? God said to Moshe, say, and that is throughout the Torah. I mean, it's got to be one of the most common phrases in the entire Torah. I've got now in how many times it would say Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. I mean, hundreds probably of that statement. So here, suddenly it's all different. Vayikra. Well, what's the Vayikra? What's the idea of Vayikra? Why is it telling us that God called? What does it mean he called? Why can't you just speak? So Rashi tells us right away at the beginning when we're discussing about laws that are not really laws we really understand. You know, the sacrifices, they're called chukim, and the whole book is full of laws that are, you could say, don't really make much sense. And, you know, you'd be correct. These are things beyond our human understanding. And at the beginning of this discussion, Hashem says to Moshe, he's calling to Moshe, and Moshe, of course, is the representative of Klal Yisrael, of the whole Jewish people. And it says that if you look at the Rashi the statement, he says over here, he says, L'chol dibros, or l'chol amiros, or l'chol tzivuim kodma kriya lashon chibah. That any time when Hashem called Moshe, anytime he spoke to him, anytime he communicated with him, anytime he commanded him, there was a preface of the idea of Vayikra, lashon chibah, which is an expression of affection, a love. And it's the very language that the angels use for Korozel Zevio. Rashi says, like we say in the Kedusha. So Vayikra, in a sense, we have to say that it's almost like saying that if you imagine reading into any time that Hashem spoke to Moshe to give over to the Jewish people, there was always an expression, even before the actual word was said, of kriya, of calling in a way of affection and love. Just like a parent calls a child, just like a child can call a parent, just like a wife calls a husband calls a wife. When you call somebody, it's, you know, it's kind of an expression of like, hi, you know, you have this relationship, a special relationship. And that's why you're calling them, because you need them, or you want to give them something, or you want to do something. Okay, so, and you know, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're saying words of dibros, which might be a bit tough, you know, Vayidaber Hashem, it's a little bit strong speech, yeah, that is usually, or whether it's Amira, which is a soft speech, and a person may think, oh, a soft speech. If I'm speaking softly, I don't need to add and inject an idea of affection because I'm speaking softly. Well, that automatically assumes that I'm affectionate. No, not necessarily. Sometimes you can be speaking softly because you're trying to get a point across. Sometimes you can be a little, sometimes people who are quite menacing speak in a very soft voice. Okay? And then, of course, you might even think that for commandments, what about commandments? If I'm commanding somebody, or if I'm commanding you, certainly you don't need to talk, in an affectionate way, because I'm telling you what to do. This is a mitzvah, this is a command. You're the soldier, I'm the general. You have to do we have to do what you're being told. So really what Rashi says, that in all of these forms of speech, there was always, Hashem always communicates an affection and a love to Moshe and to the Jewish people. Because Moshe is the Jewish people. He's like equal to the Jewish people, right? He's on one side, we're on the other. So this is the very first word, Vayikra. This book, and in fact, this entire Torah, this entire relationship with Hashem is all about love. Not really mentioned enough. It's not mentioned enough, and that's why right in the middle, like the middle book, which is smack in the middle, that kind of shows you that, so that really this is all about love and affection. Okay, so now that we understand the way Hashem is speaking to us, let's see what he's saying to us. Now, the first thing, of course, people have noticed that Vayikra with an aleph at the beginning is you see a little star there. Most of your chomoshim will say aleph ze'era, a small aleph. A small aleph. Okay? And of course, everybody wants to know, well, what's the small aleph doing there? Right? Why do we have a small aleph? Well, let's point out, before we answer that, another point which we've mentioned before, that in the famous book at the end of the Bible, it's called Chronicles 1 and 2. I don't know if anybody's ever read Chronicles. It's one of these sort of it's in the Bible, but it's sort of like, it's not really, it doesn't get much of a look in, shall we say. It's not quoted very often. It's not dramatic like the prophets and some of the writings, Psalms and, Job and stuff like that, soaring, Kohelet. I mean, this is like, it's almost like just a historical account, if you like, of what's been going on from the beginning of creation. And right at the beginning verse, it speaks about Adam was created. Adam was created, and he there in Divrei Hayomim, funnily enough, is actually a large aleph. A large aleph, which is a bit strange because, well, what's that doing there? And here we come to a beautiful interpretation by Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Ladi, who explains that the small aleph really is a form of a rectification of the large aleph, the big aleph. What is the, what do you need? What are you talking about? What's the rectification? What's wrong with the big aleph? Well, let's look at Adam. Adam, the first man it was a big aleph. But what does that symbolize? Do you know what it symbolizes? There was only one person, well, two actually, Adam and Eve, who were not born throughout history, right? They were made directly by God. Hashem made Adam directly, and of course, Eve, Chava, came from man. So now, how if we were put on a scale of 1 to 100, how great do you think Adam Harishon would have been? I think I would be fair to say probably about 101. He was a really great man. It said he could see from one end of the universe to the other. I mean, he was literally the handiwork of God. God blew directly into him his neshama. Can you imagine? He was created physically by God and spiritually. So he is literally a physical representation of God himself, which is, I mean, that itself is very hard to say, but at least in terms of the neshama, his soul, certainly. So he was a great man. Now, the problem is, you know, the expression, you may have heard an expression, the greater they are, the harder they fall. Right? It's like an old expression. Now, the thing is, see Adam Harishon was so great, and he was great. It wasn't like he was like some kind of a narcissist trying to show everybody how great he is like certain politicians like to do, right? Say no more. He really was truly great. He was made by Hashem, but he felt it as well. He felt his greatness. Do you understand? He could feel how great he was. Now, that was that was pretty much the downfall of Adam. Because he felt himself so great, therefore, he believed, like many teenagers nowadays, that they're infallible, right? And immortal and infallible.
You have to compare himself to.
Well, exactly. That's right. It's true. That well, it's not about blame here. It's just the reality. Is there anything he could have done about it? Hard to know. This was, it is, if you know everything that you have comes from Hashem, yes, that was the greatness of Moshe. Moshe was incredibly humble because he realized that everything he has comes from Hashem, and that's the small aleph, which we're going to get to in a minute. But that's the point. The point is because Adam felt his greatness. And that's why he was able to fall, because he felt he was infallible. He felt he could not fall. And that's why he felt. It's like, the temptation. What did they call the Titanic before its first voyage? What did they call it? Unsinkable. Yes, unsinkable. Absolutely. Well, that's tempting fate, isn't it? I mean, there were all kinds of systems actually in place that if it would hit icebergs and if it, this, that, they had systems actually to make sure it wouldn't sink. They would block off certain rooms and certain, chambers in the boat, which actually would make sure that it couldn't sink. The only problem is that once this iceberg hit, it flooded enough of the chambers to actually make sure that it would sink. They didn't manage to close all the doors in time so therefore it was over. Okay, but Adam kind of felt he was unsinkable as well in a way.
You know what I find? Sorry, can I just say one thing? I find it I always think about it because the garden used to have so many fruits, so many things, and the temptation with some things that you had so many plenty, isn't it? Sometimes,
yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. But we can't go too much now to the Garden of Eden, the Batcha, because we did that already, precious, and it's a long story.
Yeah.
Right, 100%. How and why it all happened is not beyond. We're just referencing here in relation to the small aleph. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu, the small aleph, as you understand, is that what rectified Adam's big aleph. This is what Rabbi Shneur Zalman says. The Vayikra, which refers to the fact that Moshe made himself so small, that was what, in a sense, brought back the Shekhinah back into the world by coming into the Mikdash, the base of Mikdash. Remember, we are now talking about this here just as a preface to the Shekhinah, which will come down as reported in Parsha's Shmini, which is just 2 portions away. So we already have a Mikdash. We already have a Mishkan. We have a tabernacle. How are we going to get the Shekhinah there? The Shekhinah came because Moshe Rabbeinu was so humble and he was so great. He didn't look at his greatness and say, look at me. He certainly, he had that incredible humility. And that was why he was the one who, despite that he was actually the greatest prophet we ever had. And he was the most humble. It was the most amazing thing. So in a way, he's like Hashem, in a way, because Hashem is the greatest of the great, and yet Hashem comes down to our world and creates us, people with all sorts of issues and challenges and problems. He still loves us. He still does what we have to, So Moshe, in a sense, was reflecting God, in a sense, in a more accurate way with a small aleph. Okay? And it was Moshe who Dafka brought the Shekhinah back down to the earth, which had, of course, with the golden calf, unfortunately, the Jewish people had messed up with the golden calf, and that had ruined the immortality that they had gained at Matan Torah. The Jews, we became immortal again at Matan Torah. After the sin of the eating of the fruit, the immortality that we had at the beginning of creation was taken away, and man, he started to die, right? As we know. It took 900 years, but, that was what was going on. Then came Matan Torah. Wow! The Torah, it says that the Torah took away the spiritual contamination that had come as a result of the sin of the fruit of knowledge. And they were now immortal again. wow, the Jews had become immortal again. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long, although it lasted longer than the previous one. Because the previous immortality, yes, it only lasted for a few hours until Adam sinned, which was on Friday afternoon, yes? So he was created in the afternoon and sinned later. So here, the immortality lasted longer. It was 40 days, at least until they worshipped the golden calf, right? And so that's actually big. So you could say the trend is good. So the next time Yitzhak Mashiach comes, of course, and we have Tchias HaMesim, it will be forever. But this is what Moshe did. He rectified the sin of the golden calf through bringing the Shekhinah down in the Mishkan. The Mishkan, the tabernacle, was that atonement for the golden calf, which was an amazing thing. Are you okay to hear? Do you hear in the background like drilling noise or not?
No.
If you, oh, good. Well, that's good because there's some kind of work going on back here, which is a bit disturbing. But it's yes, tree cleaning actually. So, but it's I'm glad you can't hear it. Now, it just occurred to me this morning, by the way, that Vayikra Aleph, also small Aleph, may have a nice hint to Megillah, Purim. Why? Because Aleph is the first letter, but it also stands for what we call Megillah's Esther. So maybe the Aleph is hinting to Esther because Purim always comes around Parshas Vayikra. And the Aleph, of course, Esther, what did she do? She gave everything up. She had nothing. She was living in an idyllic kind of a setting. She was married to Mordechai, according to many people, according to the Midrash, she was married to him. Some say it was a niece, right? And of course, a niece, by the way, is allowed to marry an uncle. He was an uncle. Some say they're married. So if they were married, you can imagine what a wonderful, amazing existence. She's Ashes Chayil of the great Tzaddik Mordechai. They're living in bliss, yeah. And one day she gets kidnapped, literally, and she has to go and marry this king, this non-Jew, who is a very coarse, as they say in Yiddish, a grobe jung, a very coarse and materialistic, nasty, with a real, a real kind of an animalistic kind of a person. Yeah, and she lost everything. She lost the life she had before, and she never got it back. And she had the incredible self-sacrifice to go to the king, even when it meant her own life was in danger. And she knew that her life was in danger. And she went and she did it anyway. And she saved the day. She saved the day. So maybe that little Aleph also symbolizes Esther. Yes? Because she really saved the day. And she just gave everything up. It was quite an amazing thing. Okay. Now, it's interesting, if again we look at this word Vayikra. Now, Vayikra means, and he called. And it also means Kara, and it happened. Now, the truth is, if you take away the Aleph, see, Rashi mentions this, by the way, in the next comment. If you take away the Aleph, what do you have? It says Vayikar. Now, in a way, it has a similar meaning. What does Vayikar mean? I guess the best way to translate it is happened upon. Now, when you call to somebody and you have a communication where you love them, where the prophets that Hashem spoke to, Mordechai, Moshe, all our prophets, he calls to them. He calls to us, as we said earlier, affectionately, with love. But when there is a time sometimes to speak to the Gentile prophets, as, for example, we did with Bilam, yes? God spoke to Bilam in order to trick him and to fool him and this and the other, to bless the Jews. Yes, we will get to that story, obviously, later on. What does it say? Vayikar Elokim al Bilam. He came upon him, so to speak, which is the exact opposite of affection. It's like you sort of bump into somebody. You bump into them. Oh, you, what are you doing? So, oh, well, you're there's a communication here, but it's hostile. It's cold. Interesting. Car is cold. Yes?
You're calm.
Car is cold. No, car. Yeah? So there's a coldness there. There's an antagonism there. There's a you know, there's a division. There's a division there between the person who's being there's a big difference between the way Hashem speaks to us, the Jewish people, with affection, and he speaks to even the prophets amongst the non-Jews, Vayikra. Okay, it's very important to know there is a big difference. Okay, and it fits quite interestingly with the last Parsha of the book of Vayikra. And at the end of the book of Vayikra, just as God says that we know B'chukos side, there's a whole lot of blessings and the opposite of blessings, right? In B'chukos side. They're called the tochacha, the rebuke, because there are some pretty heavy opposite of blessings, shall we say, in that. But Hashem says in one of the verses there, he says, if you will walk with me in a way of happenstance, then I will walk with you in a way of happenstance. Now, the word used is the word keri, kuf reshud, which is the same as Vayikra, if you're Vayikra, right? Which is a sort of very interesting idea. In other words, a lot of the problems that we have, the Jewish people, is because we don't understand that we're in a mutual relationship with Hashem, that Hashem is hinting to us here and there. He gives us these subtle hints, or maybe not so subtle hints, that we need to kind of improve ourselves. We need to be better. We need to, we need to go down a better road. And if we appreciate that, then that's good, because then we will improve each other. We improve ourselves. We can improve each other. Yes, because we're all fallible, right? Except Adam, but okay, even he was fallible. We're all fallible, and Hashem knows that, so He doesn't mind. But so he uses nature and he uses the world to give us subtle hints, or not so subtle hints. Now, if we take those hints, that's good, that's fine, then we can move forward. If we don't take the hints, this is what he said. If you go with me with Kerry, and you just think the things are Kerry, happenstance, they're just like coincidence. Things happen. It's not to do with God. It's not a message. It's not a message for me. I can't just look at everything as a message from Hashem, right? It'd be OCD over here. I can't just do that. So you go the opposite, which is wrong. You think, well, nothing is any really significant, because you can just carry on doing what you like. Okay? And that really gets us into trouble, because that, he says, oh, okay, you want to do that? So I'm going to deal the same way with you then. I'm going to just abandon you to the forces of nature. Okay? And then we'll see. Then we'll see if you think, there's divine providence or not divine providence. You'll realize that before you had the hashgacha, you had the divine providence, and now it'll look like there is no hashgacha providence. Of course, there will be, and there is always hashgacha. There was always providence, even in the worst times. Yes, there is hashgacha. There is divine providence. Look at all the stories that came out of October 7, all the miracles that we heard about. Yes, they only came out later, of course. So that's like, it's also idea Megillas Esther. Sometimes you get revealing. Megillah means to reveal. Esther, things that were concealed, right? Something that takes time. So even at a time when it looks like Hashem has kind of abandoned us, to the forces of evil, even still there, Hashem is there with us. But we want it to look like He's with us as well, not just to have emunah that Hashem is with us. We want it to be with us in a revealed, obvious, open way. So and be blessed, right? So the key to that is understanding that everything is by divine providence, and not to think it's just a happenstance. So that's an interesting connection between the very first word and the last Parsha of the Torah. And because we do have a mission. We have to realize we have a mission. It's not just, oh, Hashem likes this idea of divine providence and this, that, and the other. No, we have a mission. So therefore, we are in the world at large. You ever heard of, you know what inset is? Inset training, right? Which quite often is usually to do with schools, because the schools start often a day later than they say they're going to start, or than the term starts, because you have inset training, which means in-service training. So because every profession has to have a day of training, like three days a year, I believe. We just know it most from teachers because it impacts most on Jewish families, right? But any professional will know, if he's a lawyer or accountant or a doctor, whatever it is, they have to carry, it's like continual training. You don't say, well, I've got my degree, I got my this, I got my that, and I don't need any more training. No. You've always got to carry on training. So for Jewish people, for us to be sensitive to the idea of Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, is, because Hashem is constantly training us. we are like constantly inset training. Doesn't stop. Oh, you like that one? Yes, your granddaughter liked that voice. So
my son-in-law's just going to have to start doing a lot of years of training and in service.
Okay, very good. Okay, yeah, no, that's the point. Even after you've done all the training, yes, you don't say, right, I've done it, I'm there, I've made it. We have to, continually doing that, and that is Hashgacha Pratis. That is the covenant that Hashem has made with us, and that is hinted to in the very first word. So we're all kind of talking about the first word of the Chumash at this point, which is quite amazing how much it is giving us and teaching us. Now, let's go on to what again. Let's get to the meat of what's going on here. The next pasuk, the second pasuk, if you have your Chumash there, it says, "Daber b'nei Yisrael b'mat alehem olen ki yakrib meken korban l'Hashem." When a man will bring a korban l'Hashem, a sacrifice to Hashem, it says from animals you're allowed to bring, from cows, from sheep, okay, including goats. Okay, now the commentators tell us that these sacrifices that we will be talking about, and as I mentioned before, we have no idea what sacrifices are for. We have a few ideas, we have some insights, but we don't really know what they are. It's kind of God's business.
Sounds like it's pleasing to Hashem.
It's pleasing to Hashem, yeah, but we don't understand why. Can anybody explain to me why Hashem finds it pleasing to put the blood of an animal on the altar and burn the fats and put? Nobody can understand that. You know what I'm saying? Because it doesn't make any sense. Oh, I just loved it. Those lamb chops. You know what I mean? It doesn't really make much sense at all. Yeah. And they are cooking. Okay. But yes, of course, we have the Ramban says that when a person brings a sacrifice, especially a sin sacrifice, he's supposed to think what's happening to this animal that should really happen to him. Okay. And it's only a kindness of Hashem that he has substituted the animals for the person. And therefore, if he thinks about this and meditates about this, then he won't really sin, and then he won't sin, right? That's the idea. Okay, but again, that's to do with sin offerings, not all offerings. But here, the interesting thing is, here we're talking about the voluntary sacrifices. The voluntary sacrifices as opposed to the obligatory. And you say to yourself, well, why are we talking about obligatory? Why do we start with voluntary stuff? Why don't we start with the obligatory stuff? The things with an obligation. That comes later. The answer is quite simple, really. We are discussing at this point when the Mishkan was about to be inaugurated. It's this is like literally a day or two before there's going to be the inauguration, and there's going to be sacrifice. It's an amazing godly revolution. It's a very big red letter day, if I can say lahavdil. Yeah, it's a red letter day. The Shekhinah is coming down. So this is a very as a nation, we're on a very high spiritual level at this time. They just spent 6 months building the Mishkan, and now are about to get the revelation of godliness. Is this the sort of time when the Jewish people would actually be sinning? Unlikely. They're too busy. First of all, they've been busy for the last 6 months building the Mishkan. Second of all, they're now waiting for a great spiritual. It's like you're on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, you're not likely to do something stupid. I mean, technically, of course, you could, because you have free choice. Yes, but the 10 days of Tshuva, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. People would avoid sinning perhaps on those days. So therefore, it's not practically relevant. So therefore, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about sacrifices that are optional. They're voluntary, free will offerings. I'd like to donate something. I'd like to give something to the Mishkan, to the sacrifice, to the temple. Well, that's fine. That makes sense, right? But it doesn't make sense to do things to do with sinning, sin offering, guilt offering. Yeah, this not sin and guilt. It's an inappropriate time. On Purim, we have a very unusual thing, which is not. It doesn't happen this year. This year doesn't happen. But we have a tanus, we have a fast, and then in the afternoon we're still fasting and we lane, but we don't say tachna, we don't say avidim makim. Why? Because we're at the eve of Purim, and the eve of Purim is a very special day, so we don't even say Oshana V'Ganu Gazal, right?
Usually.
Usually on a fast day, of course, but this is the only fast day that we don't say tachna at Mincha, except this year. This year, when it comes out on a Thursday, so of course, Purim is in 3 days' time. So therefore, we're still going to say Tachna, right? But normally, Tanis Esther goes straight into Purim, right? So we don't need to say Shambhu Why? Because we're not going to say Tachna because it's Purim. And Purim is this time when people are elated on a much greater, higher spiritual level. So on a greater, higher spiritual level, you don't need to worry about it. Okay? Right. Okay. So now, look, as promised, let's do a little bit. We have. I'm sorry. Tonight, yes.
Right.
Yes, because it's a regular Thursday night. No, Mincha we will also this year, except those people who are attending the Gantz bris, and they're davening Mincha there because there's a bris. This afternoon at a bris, you don't say tachman. Same idea. Because this is an elevated, yes, you have a bris, you don't say tachman. Like a wedding. Yes, you don't say tachman when there's a chatan or a kala in the room, yes, or in the shul. So also, because it's a very special occasion. So bris too, you don't, if there is bris going on, people coming to a bris, you don't say tachman as well. So it's the exception to the exception. So somebody mentioned in shul this morning. We're going to say mincha. Oh, yeah, but if you go to the bris, you don't have to say tachman, just like a regular Tanis Esther. So it's interesting there. Hashem figured that out for us. Yeah. So, okay, a little bit about Purim. We have discussed it a bit at the moment. Obvious question usually is, why is it called Megillas Esther? First, that's the kind of open, most obvious. Why isn't it called Megillas Mordechai? Or Megillas Esther and Mordechai. I mean, Mordechai, Esther was following a lot of the instructions of Mordechai. Mordechai was telling her to do this, telling her to do that, persuading her this, that, and the other. And, she was responding. Okay, she was responding. But really, he had the main initiative. So what's going on here? And at least you could call it Megillas Esther or Mordechai. Yeah? Mordechai ve'Esther. And here we see an amazing thing. It's a bit like a kind of a metaphor between the Jewish people and Hashem. Hashem, in a sense, is a metaphor for Mordechai, and Esther is like the Jewish people. Now, the truth is, it's true that we are subject to what the Torah tells us to do. just like Esther was subject to what Moshe wanted to do, Mordechai wanted to tell her. However, we should realize that, see, when she was the one who, as we just said earlier, went to the king and saved the Jewish people. Now, what she did, it wasn't anything that Mordechai created within her. Mordechai did not create anything within her. He simply revealed the essence of who Esther really was. And when he revealed that, she became, in a way, greater than him. You know the expression, a niggin, a Chassidish niggin is like a cold bed. What's a cold bed? He says, first you warm it, then it warms you. Right? So, you understand, because you don't feel like getting into a cold bed. But after you're in the bed, hey, the bed is helping you. It's warming you, right? So, in the same way, is Esther's greatness was revealed by Mordechai. But once that revelation came out, her greatness kind of came to the fore. So it was like, I mean, if you have a fire, somebody lights a fire, right? You kind of, I mean, yes, you know that the guy lit the fire. I mean, you put the match there, you know, you put the fire lighter, but you don't really focus on the guy who started the fire. You know, I've never been to a fire. I mean, you go to a beautiful bonfire. What do you say? Oh, what a beautiful bonfire. It's so nice. It's so warm. It's full of radiance. And yeah, you don't say, oh, what an amazing bonfire. I wonder who started that bonfire. Who started that bonfire? And how did he start that bonfire? I've never heard such a discussion. I certainly wouldn't talk like that. A fire is a fire. It's a beautiful fire. It's burning. It's a bonfire. It's warming. Yeah. So that's the way I understand it. You know, when Hashem tells us to do the Torah, we do the Torah, okay. But when we keep the Torah, we do it properly. Guess what? We become higher than the Torah. We become even greater than anything in existence. Because it says that the thought of Yisrael came before anything. Before anything.
Torah keeps us.
So yeah, in a sense, the Torah warms us. But then we warm it. We Jews, we are greater. We become greater than the Torah once we keep the Torah. Yes, once we do what was, just like Esther became greater once she listened to Mordechai and she was able to save the whole people. So that's why it's called Megillah's Esther. And because Megillah, it's the idea, again, revealing. Mordechai was able to reveal in Esther that great fire of love for Hashem and for the Jewish people that really allowed her to do, really, he was the one. I mean, Mordechai admitted, who knows if this is the reason you became queen. Mute, please. Can we mute?
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one important point I'd like to mention. I'd also just like to share with you something else, and I think we'll. Yes, we'll end on this if you don't mind. We'll end a little bit earlier. You know, in the Megillah, there's a beautiful a beautiful lesson from the Rebbe about something I would not even notice really. It says when Mordechai found out prophetically about the meeting between Haman and Achashverosh to do away with the Jews. So we know he tore sackcloth, ashes on his head, fasted, wailing, crying in the streets. Esther hears about this and she goes bananas, like what is going on here? You know, he's acting like a terrible tragedy. What's going on? She had no idea, completely confused. She sent Hasoch, one of her aides, one of her aides, assistants, whatever, to ask Mordechai what's going on. What's happening here? So Mordechai tells her. And the Megillah says that it tells him. So it says Mordechai tells this Hasoch what happened with the meeting. And he says, he told him all everything that happened. And then he details about the money, the bribe, so to speak, that Haman paid to the king and what's going to happen. God forbid, the decree to kill the Jews. right? The Rebbe has a very interesting point. He notices something that who would even notice this? Kol asher karahu. Mordechai told Hathach everything that happened to him. What do you mean happened to him? Didn't happen to him. Nothing happened to him. In fact, he was the king. He was a king. He was one of the ministers in the palace. And there's no way that he would have been affected by this decree. He wouldn't have been affected by it. So he's a minister. He's in power, right? So he was, in a sense, immune and exempt from it. However, he didn't say everything that happened regarding the Jews, which perhaps you would have expected him to say. He said everything that happened regarding me or regarding him, which is referring to him, himself. Why is that? Because Mordechai had this incredible empathy and identity with his people, as true leaders usually do, that if something's happening to them, if it's happening to another Jew, even one Jew, if something negative, something bad is happening to them, then it affects him. It's affecting him, literally. It's not just something he's talking about, somebody else. They say the famous story about Reb Aryeh HaKohen HaTzadik from Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. Yes, you heard it, the Tzaddik of, what was it called? The Tzaddik of Jerusalem, I think it was called.
That's Aryeh Levine.
Aryeh Levine, thank you. And the story goes, everybody tells this story, that he once went to the doctor. His wife had a problem with her foot, and he opened the discussion and he said, doctor, he said, how can I help you? He said, doctor, my wife's foot is hurting us or bothering us. Yes? It's not like my wife's foot is hurting her or hurting, bothering her. It's hurting us, right? So there's a certain unity there. So this is what when Mordechai told Hathach, it said, because he felt it was happening to him. He felt it was happening to him. He felt it was relevant to him, even though it definitely was not. But that was his great, incredible empathy. I just saw this morning, and I thought I want to share that with you. And so I think at this point, all it leaves for me to say is an easy fast, as I already said. I wish everybody well, and you have a fantastic Purim. And of course, if you want to join us for the Purim Suda, if you're not already, please sign up on chabadlive.com. You're all welcome. Bring your friends. There's still a few places left, not too many, but a few. And hopefully try to hear the Megillah. The Megillah reading, of course, Motzei Shabbos about half an hour after Shabbos at Chabad House, approximately 7:45, I believe. And then Sunday morning, approximately 9:45. There will be a late reading of Megillah at Chabad House at 4:30, just before the Suda, which will be at 5 o'clock. Don't forget to give gifts to your friends, 2 gifts of food to one friend. And don't forget to give charity on the day of Purim to 2 poor people at least, or to organizations that at least give to the poor people. And are there any questions before we sign off? Anybody have any questions, comments? No? Well, that's good. There's no questions. That's wonderful. If there's no questions.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. That was very lovely.
Pleasure. Oh, yes. Very good. Thank you very much. There is a program today at 3 o'clock that is a unity program for Jews all over the world. We sent it on our group. Okay. There's we should post it on the ladies group as well. Maybe we should put it even on the Lunch and Learn group. It's at 3 o'clock, 3:30. The whole world, we're trying to get the whole world to say Shema Yisrael at 3:30. That's today.
Can I ask a question about that?
I don't really know very much about it, but
Well, just that Ellie mentioned, why would they be saying Shema then, which is not the normal time for saying it?
well, it's very simple. I would have thought you want to try and say it at a time that is good for all the communities around the world,
Right,
or
right.
most Jewish communities around the world that will be convenient for them to say it at that time. If you have it at 9 o'clock a.m. Yes. Well, what are all the Jews in America going to do?
Yeah.
They're all
Sleep.
sleeping. You see.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is not. It's not about getting the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema.
It's Achdut.
Yes, it's saying, it's a prayer to Hashem saying, look, we are yours, Shema Yisrael, you're our father, Avinu Malkeinu, you're our father, Shema Yisrael, and help us and take us out of this galus already. Bring Mashiach, send Mashiach.
Sorry, what's happening at 3 o'clock though? Is it on Zoom?
I don't know, there's probably some speeches and
How do you get on?
It's going to be, everybody's going to say Shema all together.
At
3:30.
What's happening at 3 o'clock?
The main event is at 3 o'clock. I guess it means.
Is it on Zoom? Where is it? How does one act?
Well, look, do you have WhatsApp?
No.
Yeah.
You don't have our WhatsApp? Really?
No, I don't want to die. If I had WhatsApp, it'd be ding ding all day. I'd go mad.
Oh, I see. Ding, ding. Ding,
I've
ding.
got enough with a few kids who've got an iPhone. That's enough.
Okay, so just a second.
My sister-in-law from Israel sent me the other one, the 3:30.
I'm just trying to see where it is.
I'll just say Shema at 3:30. In fact, I better put my alarm on for 3:29. And I think, what did I put that on for? Okay.
It says, let me see here. shemayisrael.com. Shema, SHMA dash Israel.com. That's
Is it with an I, no Y?
She's not in the group. Sorry,
Okay.
Israel with a I, exactly. SHMA dash Israel.com.
And that's a Zoom.
Pardon?
No, that's a website, isn't it?
That is a
What's the
website.
difference? What's the difference?
You'll be able to see if you just dial up there. You'll be able to see what's going on.
What will it come on
Okay.
YouTube? How do you access it?
I'm afraid I don't know
All right.
anymore.
All
right.
I'll say Shema at 3:30. Believe Ada.
Okay, great
Okay,
stuff.
thank you for that.
Okay,
Thank you
pleasure.
very much, Robin. Thank you.
Okay, pleasure.
Everyone have a happy Purim.
Same here. Same to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Purim Sameach. Where am I?